Jacques Derrida was a French philosopher best known for developing the concept of deconstruction. His work challenged traditional ideas about language, meaning, and interpretation, which made him one of the most controversial thinkers of the 20th century. Derrida argued that meaning is never fixed and that words do not have stable definitions. Instead, meaning is always shifting based on context, relationships between words, and how people interpret them. This idea was unsettling for many because it seemed to suggest that truth itself was uncertain or even impossible to fully grasp. Derrida's work influenced literature, philosophy, and even law, but it also faced strong criticism for being difficult to understand and for appearing to undermine objective knowledge. Deconstruction is the idea that texts, words, and ideas cannot be understood in a single fixed way. Derrida argued that language is always unstable because words gain meaning in relation to other words, rather than through a direct connection to reality. This was controversial because it challenged the belief that language is a clear and reliable tool for communication. If meaning is always shifting, then how can we be certain about anything? Critics accused Derrida of making interpretation too subjective, allowing for endless meanings rather than a clear understanding of what something actually means. Now let's look at another key idea. Difference is a term Derrida invented to explain how meaning is always delayed and dependent on other words. He combined two ideas: difference, how words differ from one another, and deferral, how meaning is always postponed because words refer to other words. This was controversial because it suggested that meaning is never fully present. It is always shifting depending on context and interpretation. Some saw this as a major challenge to philosophy and logic, which often rely on stable definitions. Others accused Derrida of making language seem meaningless, even though he insisted that he was simply revealing how it already worked. Next, let's examine another key idea. The logocentric tradition refers to the belief that speech is more reliable than writing because it is more closely connected to thought. Derrida argued that Western philosophy had always favoured speech over writing, assuming that speech is more natural and direct. He rejected this idea, showing that writing is just as important as speech in shaping meaning. This was controversial because it went against long-standing philosophical traditions that trace back to Plato and Aristotle. If writing was just as significant as speech, then assumptions about truth, presence, and direct communication had to be reconsidered. Many critics felt that Derrida was attacking the foundations of rational thought. Now let's move on to another key idea. The binary oppositions of language refer to the way words are often understood in terms of opposing pairs, such as light-dark, male-female, or reason-emotion. Derrida argued that these oppositions are not natural, but are created by language itself, with one term always seen as more important than the other. He tried to show that these oppositions are unstable and can be broken down. This was controversial because it challenged deeply held beliefs about how meaning is structured in culture and society. Many people worried that this could lead to the breakdown of important distinctions, making it difficult to establish clear values or principles. Now let's explore one final key idea. The inescapability of interpretation is the idea that no reading of a text is ever final or objective. Derrida argued that because meaning is always shifting, every interpretation is just one possibility among many. There is no single correct way to understand a text, even if the author intended a specific meaning. This was controversial because it seemed to remove any authority from writers, scholars, or philosophers who tried to establish clear meanings. Critics argued that this could lead to confusion and chaos, making it impossible to agree on facts or shared truths. Derrida, however, believed that this was simply the reality of how language and meaning work, whether people accepted it or not.